Okay, we are live. Hey guys, what's going on? James here. Welcome back to yet another episode of the MrBucsNation podcast. Joining me is Billy, William_Walsh_NFL here on YouTube, the co-host of this podcast. Billy, how you doing today, man? That's true. That's true. Little bit of some different scheduling today. We got a Thursday in here, right? But we're still here talking about the Bucs. And Billy, we have a lot of things to dive into today, right? We're gonna be talking about the importance of the Buccaneers game versus the Atlanta Falcons. Gonna be going over the injury report, but there are a couple of other things that I want to talk about today. The first of which is something that has developed really weirdly isn't the term, but just like developed quickly in the past 24 hours. So, and it's about Chris Godwin. And I made a video about this here on the channel, but we're going to be talking about it a little bit here in this live stream today to kind of open up the podcast episode. So, for those of you who do not know, it was yesterday on Instagram, I believe, where an article had come out from, or I guess, it had been reported by some various Buccaneers media outlets that Chris Godwin's wife was not happy with Todd Bowles' post-game press conference quotes about Chris Godwin. So I'm going to read the exact quote here, Billy, because to be completely honest, like, there is some stuff I want to dive into regarding this quote. I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions on it and kind of talk about what Chris Godwin's wife had to say. But let's see if we can dive a bit into this. So on December 4th, you take a look at the first question that was asked was regarding Mike Evans and how he had so many long receptions this season. And that was all well and good. The next question, though, was on if it was surprising for Chris Godwin to have no catches. And Todd Bowles said, I just saw that. We were subbing him out a lot. Obviously, he's a little nicked up, so he's not totally 100%. Nobody is, but he's probably banged up more than most. For him to get the run for us was huge for him. Me and you had talked about this. Chris Godwin had a 19-yard end-around touchdown in that Carolina Panthers game. I think it helped him out a lot. It helped us out a lot, so it was good to see him get in the end zone. On surface value, seems like a pretty standard answer there. Not necessarily a big deal, in my opinion, right? However, you then take a look later, maybe it was the next day, maybe it was something along those lines, but Chris Godwin's wife took to social media and said, quote, I'm not sure why we are just blatantly lying here. Regardless of how banged up Chris is, he continues to work his butt off. Hasn't missed a game, continues to run great routes and get open. I don't know why the things are the way they are. This isn't my team to coach. But lying on Chris and applying negativity on his worth ethic is infuriating. Let's not act like he had to be subbed out so much more than usual when in fact he's been playing just the same. And that's accurate. He had 52 total snaps in week number 12. He, that's like right in the middle in terms of his game snap logs this year. And I think it's fair to say that what Todd Bowles had said was inaccurate. Now, I've put a lot of thought into this since I made my video, and was it outright lying? No. I mean, yes, but also, like, was it intentful lying? I don't know. Todd Bowles may have just genuinely not known that Chris Godwin was playing as much as he thought he was playing. And ultimately, Todd Bowles might not even be paying attention to that, right? Whenever everything is said and done. He's worrying about the defense in that situation. But that part is inaccurate. But to say that it's... The part of that I don't necessarily agree with is to say where it's implying negativity on Chris Godwin's work ethic. I don't necessarily get that. And this took a little bit of a turn today, Billy, where Chris Godwin, after practice today, said that I don't think Coach Bowles had any malice in what he was saying. I don't know if disrespected is the right term. I think it is tough. I want to be as available as I can. You want to contribute. That didn't happen on Sunday like I'd hoped. It's things that you can live and learn from at the end of the day. I was still there. I was able to contribute in some capacity. Anybody that would leave a game with 0 catches, I don't know if they would be too pleased with that. I think that it was just that. I think that is just the competitor in me. I think we had a really good talk. It was very productive. I think we see eye to eye on it. And that was talking about Dave Canales and Chris Godwin talking about that. So, again, like Brutal's Bucs says, like non-story, this isn't going to end up being really anything in my opinion. It is just kind of an interesting thing on a slow news week, Billy. What are your thoughts and opinions on this entire situation regarding Chris Godwin and regarding just the overall everything with Todd Bowles quotes and Chris Godwin's wife making some comments on social media and then Chris Godwin going back in and saying like, no, everything's fine. Just thoughts?
Calling her on the phone. That's Chris Godwin coming home frustrated, venting to her, and she's taking that and putting that out there. So I think that's kind of why you have Chris Godwin with his quotes today that she so eloquently stated for us. He's kind of doing some damage control and kind of having to walk it back on behalf of his wife. So I think that the whole thing is just a little messy. And Godwin is, of course, has been a professional the whole time he's been here and just is an upstanding kind of guy. So of course he's going to walk it back and keep it professional and try to keep it in-house, despite the fact that it slightly got out of house, so to speak. But whenever you have situations, and they're not necessarily uncommon, but whenever you have situations like this, I can think back to Matt Stafford's wife recently, or I shouldn't say recently, but a little while ago was in the news for a comment that she made. Obviously, the OG of commentary like this was Tom Brady's wife, right? Gisele Bundchen, when Wes Welker dropped the ball in the Super Bowl. It's just a little messy because ultimately things like this don't need to be said in public. Any sort of a matter like that, it should be kept in-house. And obviously, Godwin kind of said it, right? He's going to feel frustrated if he's not producing. And it's not as if it's a one-game thing. His production has not been great all season. I feel like it's a direct shot at Bowles, what his wife posted, because she's literally adding him, right? It's a direct shot at Bowles, but it's an indirect shot at Dave Canales. And it's also a sort of really mild indirect shot at Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield decides who gets the ball play to play. I mean, he throws the ball, right? So Mike Evans gets more reps and Rashad White gets more reps and, Chris Godwin gets less, So I think that it's just a little messy. It's a little sloppy and it's a little unnecessary to have that messiness going into the most important game of your season.
Yeah, I mean, like ultimately, I think things will improve, right? I think that this is something that will get a pretty quick turnaround. I think all things considered, and look, I mean, like we have seen situations like that before. Like you said, it's never necessarily a good thing whenever something like that does happen, but ultimately, it's not the end of the world. I mean, there's definitely like different situations like requesting a trade or or requesting a like nothing like that is happening, obviously, right?
It's an added, like, I don't even want to call it a distraction. It's just an added thing that is tacked on to this week that could potentially take focus away from the task at hand. That to me, that's all it is. Like Baker Mayfield and Chris Godwin may have a conversation this week privately. Chris Godwin and Canales, Chris Godwin and Todd Bowles. It's just an added layer that didn't need to be there.
Yeah, and speaking of the offense, speaking of just wide receivers, right? And on a more positive note, I want to shift gears and talk about Mike Evans. Because Billy, in the last game versus the Carolina Panthers game I went to, and it was pouring rain. It was a lot of fun. But not only did the Bucs win, Mike Evans hit 1,000 yards on the year, his 10th consecutive 1,000-yard season to start a career. the only player in NFL history to do that. Now he is one season away from tying the record of most consecutive seasons for 1,000 yards, just period. By the way, who holds that record? Jerry Rice. That's the guy who holds that record, the greatest wide receiver of all time. Mike Evans has a chance to tie his record next year. So that's awesome. You love to see that. I had given my thoughts and opinions about that, Billy, in a separate video, but I want to get your thoughts and opinions about Mike Evans, where he's at in his NFL career so far up to this point in terms of the national context, and just what you have seen from the greatness of Mike Evans. Because everybody in the chat knows he's just absolutely phenomenal and great. But just kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Mike Evans, best offensive player the Bucs have ever had, team history. Obviously going to retire, get his name up on the stadium. On a Hall of Fame arc, I think that it's crazy because of what the growth that Mike Evans has undergone, right? He wasn't always this. I mean, he's always good, but he's actually, a player who started good and got better. It's crazy to see and just to be able to, you just want to appreciate what he is, because I think the biggest lasting memory I will always have of Mike Evans is he's such a selfless superstar. And that is a very rare kind of player. It's hard to find guys who are a true number one receiver at that position and are completely devoid of being a diva and completely focused on the team and winning. And they are driven to do that. That is just a rare athlete that the Buccaneers, Jason Light, his first ever draft pick with the team, certainly nailed it. And the Bucs are lucky to have Mike Evans on and off the field. He's class personified and just, it couldn't happen for a better guy. And of course, not only does it happen, but he explodes and has a monster game, really the driving force of the Bucs offense last week to get the Bucs to win.
That's an understatement. He was their offense. I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness. It was so striking to see, like, Baker had 200 something yards last week. Mike Evans had 176 of them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, that's nuts. I mean, Mike Evans he had a 70-yard touchdown last week. That was awesome, right? 76 yards or something like that.
What was that like to be there when he broke free? Did the stadium just erupt?
Oh yeah. And then everybody, so they had to review it.
Right, to see.
And everybody, it was one of those things where you're watching the replay on the big board. In the moment it showed the angle of the football going over the pylon, everybody just exploded because they thought it was a touchdown. So they exploded and that is a touchdown. And then the referee was still reviewing it, and then the referee came back out and he said it is a touchdown, and everybody just lost their minds. So that was good.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mike always feasting against the Carolina Panthers. Remember last year, 200 yards to clinch the Bucs playoffs. Mike Evans just goes off 3 touchdowns against the Panthers last year.
Yeah, no. I mean, and I had talked about this. I had talked about this in a separate video, right? But one thing that I don't think even anybody saw, I wish I had a clip of it. I do not. But one thing that happened during the game was they stopped the game to honor Mike Evans getting 1,000 yards, getting that 10 straight seasons of 1,000 yards, and they stopped the game. Everybody was cheering, and it was a great time, right? One thing that I saw that they showed up on the big board that, again, I don't know if anybody saw this on the TV broadcast, but Chris Godwin was in the huddle, and he went behind Mike Evans and, put the crown on his head. Mimicked putting a crown on his head. And what a cool moment, and what an accurate moment, right? Because Chris Godwin, Mike Evans is the king of consistency. I don't have to tell anybody that. I think they know that. It's just he shows it year in, year out, what he can do as, in my opinion, one of the best wide receivers, not just in the current day, but in NFL history. He's the king of consistency, and he just continues to show that every single year.
Yeah, for a long time, Lavonte David was regarded as just the most underrated player in the NFL because he was just dominant and nobody knew it. Nobody knew who he was. Who's Lavonte David, right? Mike Evans, though, obviously everybody knows who he is. He plays a position that gets a lot more attention than Lavonte David, but very underrated player. I mean, I don't have a lot of friends who are Bucks fans, so I have a lot of football fan friends who like different teams and don't necessarily pay attention to the Bucks, and probably wouldn't pay attention at all if I didn't like the Bucks. And he is never brought up in discussions of who's a top 3 receiver in the league, who's a top 5 receiver in the league. He never gets that sort of credibility. I believe when the Madden ratings came out, even not that the Madden ratings or anything, but I think I wrote an article on Bucs Nation. I think Mike Evans was like the 10th or 11th best guy, when the Madden ratings came out. Like the disrespect, or I shouldn't even say disrespect, but it's just the lack of awareness of how consistent and how great Mike Evans is playing with a variety of different quarterbacks in talent, skill, and just stylistically. I mean, people forget in college, Mike Evans got Johnny Manziel like plugged into the league. Like, come on, Mike Evans has just played with a variety of different types of quarterbacks and never failed to deliver. So I think, again, true greatness to me when you're like an athlete in a team sport, everybody can be good, or most people can be good when everything's going well and the people around them are playing well. True greatness is when you're great independent of what's around you. The supporting cast may not be clicking, everything may be going south, but you're still great. That is, to me, that's the definition of true greatness in a team sport.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you with that. I think that you look at it, and Evans, much like Levante David, much like Gerald McCoy when he was here, like, you've been around a lot of bad teams, in the modern era. Like,
Yeah.
Mike Evans has seen it all, very Larry Fitzgerald-esque. He has seen Mike Glennon. He has seen Josh McCown. He has seen Baker Mayfield. He has seen Jameis Winston. He has seen Tom Brady. He has seen Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, now obviously it's not as many as Larry Fitzgerald, but you give Evans another 5-6 years, who knows where he'll end up in terms of how many
I
quarterbacks.
believe Mike Evans has a touchdown catch from Blaine Gabbert, too, if I'm not mistaken.
He might. Oh, I think he does. Blaine Gabbert is also in there. You forget about that.
Gift of Gabbert.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of different guys, right? And it's just, again, you talk about the consistency, you talk about just the overall ability of Mike Evans to do it year in and year out with so many different people around him. He's the one constant on the offense every year. Didn't Chris Godwin?
With no diva in him.
No.
I mean, when the Buccaneers, Tom Brady comes and, everything was shifted, right? Geared towards winning. Tom Brady says he wants to bring in Antonio Brown, who is a certified number 1 wide receiver. I bet people thought I was going to go somewhere else when I said the word certified. Certified number 1 receiver. If you're already on a team as the number 1 receiver and your quarterback comes to you, he's like, bro, I want to bring in this number 1 receiver. Like, you could take a little bit of, like, you could take that the wrong way. But Mike Evans takes it in stride. Absolutely. Let's bring him in. He's going to help us win. And that is rare. Like I said, it's a rare athlete who is not interested in himself and is just interested in the team. That is very rare. That's a rare trait. And it's a valuable one because you see that selflessness play out, and you watch guys like Chris Godwin's development. Like Chris Godwin wasn't a first round pick who was projected to be what he's become. And, what Vincent Jackson was able to do for Mike Evans, helping him out when he was young, I'm sure Mike Evans has paid it back in full to the other guys who he has helped bring up in the receiver room.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%, man. I mean, Mike Evans is phenomenal. He's great. We all know this. I mean, it's not a secret. it's not. So, yeah, congrats to Mike Evans, and hopefully he has
Pay the man.
Yeah, that's actually okay. That's another thing that they were chanting was "pay that man" when I think he'd scored the touchdown or gotten. It was either, I think it was either the touchdown or whenever they announced that he had gotten the 10,000 or 10 straight seasons or whatever it may have been. That's what they were chanting as well. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue, right? I think they should. I think they will ultimately when the time comes. I don't see why they wouldn't. Even like a franchise tag would probably be in play. Mike Evans is going to stick around.
It would be a pretty big black stain on Jason Li's resume if he let Mike walk.
Yeah, I agree.
Just bad for business. Just bad for business.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, Mike Evans has a pretty big week this upcoming game versus the Falcons. And speaking of that game, Billy, it's a pretty important game. But before we dive into the importance of that game, I want to go ahead and I want to talk about the injury report for the Bucs versus the Falcons because, oh man, there's a lot of people on that list, Billy. There are a lot. Let's go ahead and get started with the linebackers. You have KJ Britt, who was limited on Wednesday, full participant on Thursday, so that's good. You have Levante David, who was full go on Wednesday and on Thursday. You have Devin White, who did not participate on Wednesday or Thursday either. And Servassier Dennis, who is full go on Wednesday and Thursday. Finally seems like the Bucs are getting a little bit healthier at that linebacker position, Billy. And we've talked about JJ Russell and Ryan Neal both stepping up, but obviously getting one, if not multiple, of those linebackers back is very, very huge for the defense, correct?
Yeah, it comes at the absolute perfect time because the Atlanta Falcons are a running football team. I mean, Desmond Ridder threw the ball 27 times last week, and he had 12 completions. They won a game with 121 yards out of their quarterback. So they're going to run the football, right? I think the Buccaneers' ability to stop the run is going to determine whether or not they win the game. Tackles in space, something the Buccaneers have not really thrived in this season, going to show up in a big way this week. And having a guy like Levante David, or just having a linebacker instead of a safety, playing linebacker, going to make a huge difference because the Falcons, if anybody actually watched the Falcons-Jets game last week, I know who would do that, right? But I did. And the Falcons' entire game plan is running backs and tight ends. They hand it to the running backs, they throw it to the running backs, and then they throw it to the tight ends. And who's going to be engaged with those individuals the most? Linebackers. So it's going to be a big day for the Buccaneers linebackers, matchups all over the field. Bijan Robinson had 3 catches last week. Cordell Patterson had a catch. Bijan Robinson with 18 rushes. 8 rushes out of Tyler Algier. And Cordell Patterson had 5. I mean, that is just a team who's willing to run the ball. And against the Jets, again, if you guys watched the game, they had minimal to no success running the ball early, but the Falcons are willing to stay with it. That's their identity. That's who they are. They're not going to give up on it just because you stop them early. They're going to rely on the fact that they can wear you down. And the Buccaneers are going to really they're going to get tested. Their run defense is going to get tested in a big way. And it'll be interesting to see if they got the mettle to kind of stand tough and have the fortitude and the backbone to hang in there.
I agree. Like getting Levante David back's huge. Even if it was just Levante David coming back alone, that would be a really, really huge deal. But you're getting KJ Britt possibly getting worked back in there. Servassier Dennis seems like he's going to be good to go also. Devin White not being a participant is, interesting. We'll dive into that probably. Well, no, we can dive into it now. I do wonder if you see some guys step up like Servassier Dennis or KJ Britt, is this maybe a Matt Filer situation where if those guys really come out and look pretty good, do you maybe sub out Devin White a little bit more? I don't personally see it, but hey, might as well try and bring it up, right?
I'm all for it. I don't think it's going to happen either. I think Devin White he is entrenched with Todd Bowles. He is tied to the hip with Todd Bowles as if he were in his belt loop. I don't know why, but it just is the case. So if Devin White is healthy and wants to play, I think he'll start definitively. I also want to add with the tight ends and running backs, Desmond Ridder completed 12 passes last week. One of 12 was to a wide receiver, 11 to tight ends and running backs. So that's where the Falcons are going with the football. It's tight ends and running backs. That's the game plan. That's the scheme. It's not even all Kyle Pitts. It's not all Bijan. It's spread out. Jonnu Smith, Pruitt, Cordero. It is spread out, but it is all those position groups. So linebackers, safeties, going to have to come up and make tackles and going to have to cover for sure. But yeah, Devin White. Go ahead. You go.
Continuing on with the injury report, you have Jamel Dean, who did not participate Wednesday or Thursday. That's a situation that's been going on for a couple of weeks now, so no really new developments there besides what we've talked about in the past already. Chris Godwin was resting on Thursday. Seems like he should be ready to go. Robert Hainsey is on the injury report, was limited Wednesday, full go on Thursday with a knee injury. So it seems like he's probably good if I had to guess, considering he was full go Thursday, but let's pay attention to that also. Josh Hayes was not participating on Wednesday, limited on Thursday due to an illness. Cody Mock with limited ability on both Wednesday and Thursday due to a foot injury. Tristan Wirfs was limited on Wednesday, but full go on Thursday, so it seems like he's going to be okay. He's been an absolute Iron Man for the Bucs. He's had a lot of nagging injuries. Here's another big one. No pun intended, but Vita Vea did not participate on Wednesday or Thursday with a toe injury. That would be a big loss to this defense, Billy. The rest of the guys that we've named there, it seems like they're probably going to be able to go, but Vita Vea not participating Wednesday or Thursday, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a huge loss, especially like we just said, against a team that's going to run the football. But Vita Vea, much like Tristan Wirfs, he's had nagging injuries all season and has battled through for the most part. I kind of feel in my gut that like he's going to play. But I did want to take a moment. Tristan Wirfs, absolutely an Iron Man. And, it's one thing to be a good player, but, the old cliche, the best ability is availability, right? You can only be a good player if you're actually on the field. Tristan Wirfs, he seems like he limps off the field quite often and then limps back on. They just tape him up and then he's back out there. And, you got to appreciate that out of your star players for them to just, carry on like that and fight through stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like, especially with tackles, right? Like, that's, concerning business with your tackles dealing with injuries. Look at Mekhi Becton. It completely, blew through his career in terms of with the New York Jets, just the injuries that he had sustained. So anytime Wirfs goes down, you get nervous, right? Considering that Wirfs is the best offensive lineman, probably top 2 offensive player on this team. Him and Mike Evans are right there.
Tristan Wirfs might be the best player on the team.
He genuinely might, right? So whenever you do see him go down with injury, that's concerning, especially whenever you've got some other guys hurt along that offensive line, like your starting center Robert Hainsey, like your starting guard Cody Mock, who are dealing with some things too. You want that solidarity, you want that consistency, and it seems like everybody should be okay and should be good to go. With the injury report, you really the only three guys that I would say are very much in doubt, or maybe not even in doubt for say Vita Vea, but the 2 guys, Jamel Dean, Devin White, seems like they're not going to play. Vita Vea, we'll see. Like you said, he's kind of bounced back through some stuff before. If he doesn't, Greg Gaines would probably be that starting nose tackle, which is, Greg Gaines has been pretty quiet this year, I think, all things considered. Not even necessarily to say he's been, like, terrible. Like, I haven't seen him make a ton of mistakes, but I haven't seen him make a ton of plays either, Billy. So he would probably be the guy who'd be subbing in for Vita Vea. In the case of Tristan Wirfs, it would be probably Justin School, but it seems like Wirfs is probably going to play. In the case of Devin White, all the other linebackers coming back, like Clemente David, KJ Britt, Servassier Dennis. In the case of Jamel Dean, nothing new. You have Zion McCollum there. You have Carlton Davis, who's still healthy and available. You have Christian Izien, who is still going to be in that mix, and a couple of other guys in there as well. So, yeah, a lot of guys who are kind of dinged up, Billy, with limited, but then full go on Thursdays and whatnot. So, really, the only 3 guys, in my opinion, worth paying attention to are Vita Vea, Devin White, and Jamel Dean as guys who are legitimately, in potential of missing this game. What do you think?
Yeah, and at this point in the season, everybody's kind of dealing with something, right? Very few people in the league are still fully healthy, this late in the year. So you kind of expect it. The injury report for most teams is usually littered with a lot of names, a lot of faces. Hopefully guys can play through it. Dean, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Dean on paper is a big loss because Zion McCollum feels like a massive drop-off. But then when you brought up the statistics of some of the passer ratings against Dean and Davis and McCollum in comparison, it's not necessarily as big a loss as it feels like it should be. And it'll be interesting to see how Todd Bowles deploys the defense if Vita Vea doesn't play, especially knowing he's going into a matchup against a running team. It'd be interesting to see. I'm always curious about strategy and scheme and how,
might see a lot more blitzing.
I'd be interested to see how he handles it. So I'm sure he'll have something creatively planned, hopefully. And it's intriguing to see how the matchup's going to play out for sure.
Also, just real quick, I wanted to make a note on the Falcons. They've got some banged up cornerbacks. I mean, Mike Hughes was full go with a hand injury. Jeff Okuda was limited on Wednesday no go on Thursday due to an ankle injury. AJ Terrell is in the concussion protocol. He was limited Wednesday and Thursday, so the Bucs could very much take advantage of that, Billy, with their wide receiver room, and that's going to be one that's definitely worth paying attention to. But for the Bucs,
Mike Evans had a big day against the Falcons earlier this year as well.
he did, so that may continue. Maybe we'll see Chris Godwin get more involved. Fingers crossed. We'll see, but yeah, that is the injury report for the Bucs versus the Falcons, at least as of today, Thursday. So there you go. But Billy, I want to talk about. Oh man, I want to talk about the importance of this game, right? Because I feel like we've been saying it every week, like versus the Colts. This is the most important game for the Bucs this year. Versus the Panthers. Okay, no, seriously, this is the most important game for the Bucs this year. Now against the Falcons, no, really, guys, I promise this one is the most important game for the Bucs this year. Billy, if the Bucs win this game, they're number 1 in the NFC South, which is mind-boggling to think about considering where me and you were talking about this team 2 weeks ago after they had lost to the Indianapolis Colts. The NFC South has been a mess. I mean, an absolute mess. This is a very important game. The Bucs are going in enemy territory against the Atlanta Falcons, a team that beat the Bucs earlier this year in definitely a winnable game for the Bucs. Why do you feel like this game is so important for this team?
Well, you mentioned it when you talked about how we've been saying over and over again on a loop, this is the most important game. This is the most important game. And it's because the Buccaneers have kind of been in playoff mode for a little while now because they ate away like all their leeway because they just took loss after loss after loss after loss. And then it became like, okay, our back's up against the wall. We really can't lose any more games. So, yeah, they've been in like do or die mode for a little while now. So it's just the next game on the schedule. But this one is ultra important because, of course, it's a divisional game. The way the NFC South is playing out this year and did last year as well, tiebreakers are going to be everything. So the Buccaneers are in this weird, murky, kind of gross-ish spot where if the Bucs lose every non-divisional game they have left, but win their 3 remaining divisional games, the record won't look great, but that could be enough because they'll have tiebreakers and they could nudge their way in.
They'd be 8-9 at that point.
Right. It looks ugly. Nobody wants to be 8-9 and that shouldn't, in theory, be enough to get you into, a home playoff game. But in reality, you'd have the tiebreakers. You'd only have 1 loss in the division at that point, and that would have been nullified by coming back and beating the Falcons the second time around. And you would be in a situation where it'd be an advantageous position to be in. Could it happen? Is that how it's going to play out? Of course, there's many factors that go into it, but this game is the most important because this team is the team ahead of you. It's a divisional game when tiebreakers are going to be crucial. And it's a team that beat you in a very, like you said, painfully winnable game the first time around. Painfully winnable. I mean, painfully winnable game. So this time around, you would hope, kind of rolling off the momentum of last week and the Falcons looking like as they beat the Jets in the least convincing way possible. So you would hope the Buccaneers have enough like in the tank to get up for this game and roll through it because they need the cushion that they could take, 2 losses in the next 2 weeks up against the Packers and the Jaguars, the 2 toughest remaining teams on their schedule. They got to win this week to potentially cushion the blow of losing those 2 games so that they could come back and win the next 2 in division and finish out the season 3 of their last 5.
There you go. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that obviously the division games that are left are the most important ones. And we're going to be but this one is the most important of the divisional games because right now as it stands, the Saints, they're in a behind situation. The Panthers, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry this has happened to you. This is a very unfortunate situation. And, look, that's just not, not fun for them.
Panthers fan. Tough year.
Yeah, very tough year. But the Falcons game is important. Obviously, it's very important. That's not just battle for first place in the NFC South, Billy. Like, that is for the real leverage in the division for the remainder of this go-around, right? For the remainder of this season, about for the last month, this game is going to set that table for ooh, what does each of these three teams battling for first place? Sorry, Carolina Panthers, but those three teams, what are they looking at? If the Bucs lose this game, dramatically lowers their chances of being in a position to make the playoffs. Dramatically lowers it. However, if they win, wouldn't necessarily say that they are in the driver's seat, but they're riding passenger right there with the Falcons. Like they're both right there at the front of the car, so to speak. And the Saints are looking a little bit behind. The Panthers, well, they crashed like 2 months ago, so I don't really know what's happening with them. And again, I'm so sorry, Panthers fans, but
We are both wearing the blue though to
we
support.
yeah, a little light blue for the Panthers today, I guess. But point being is that yeah, like, and look, I know people are going to say the Bucs making the playoffs could be the worst thing for this team for the
Yeah.
future or whatever it may be, because that means they're going to keep Todd Bowles. For anybody who doesn't want Baker Mayfield, I'm part of the Baker brigade, but that means that means that Baker would probably be sticking around. But ultimately, we're all just fans. Like, the organization wants to win football games. The coaching staff wants to win football games. So yeah, duh, they want to go out there and make the playoffs and win the division, right? Now, fans can have different opinions about that. It's a very subjective type of situation, but ultimately, yeah, the team wants to go out there and win these games and make the playoffs. Duh. So it's going to be a very important game to them. The Bucs hopefully aren't going to come out and just completely flop on the ground like we have seen in a couple of situations in the past. It hasn't been great overall. Like this is the and I'm gonna tell you this right now, Billy. This is the game where not only can the Buccaneers kind of take control of their destiny for the remainder of the season, these are the types of games where, whether you love him or not, whether you want to see him be the coach or not, this is the game where Todd Bowles has to really turn it around, right? And again, regardless of what people's thoughts and opinions are on Bowles, that's fine. We're not going to talk about that right now. Billy, I don't think you would disagree that yeah, if Bowles wants to prove that he can hang as a coach and
Yes.
win those winnable, need to win types of games, he's got to come out and get a win against Atlanta.
Yes. This is, I think, really what the Falcons are. This is a narrative game, right? It's a very important game for a lot of individuals because it's a narrative altering game. Todd Bowles is a defensive guy, right? He cannot lose to Desmond Ridder twice. It just can't happen. I mean, Desmond Ridder is like, it just can't happen. Okay. Desmond Ridder lost the job to Taylor Heineke. It's just unacceptable. It cannot happen. The Falcons are not this juggernaut, right? So yeah, it's a narrative altering game for Bowles, and it's also a narrative altering game for Baker Mayfield because he also can't lose to Desmond Ridder and then expect to come back as the starter and walk around with his chest out. These things cannot happen, right? Because Desmond Ridder is not going to give you 25 plus points. So it's for the Bucs, it's okay, we expect him to not score a lot. We should get some turnovers if you're Bowles in the defense. And for Baker Mayfield, it's like, if I can get 3 touchdowns on the board, it's unlikely we lose this game. Right. So it's for both of them, it's a really big narrative altering game. If they lose, it's doom and gloom. The world is collapsing. If they win, it's like, well, yeah, that was what you were supposed to do and you did it. So you earn a little bit of your stripes and that credibility. The other thing I think about the Falcons, they're not a great team, but they're also a solid team. And what I mean by that is the Falcons are not going to actively give you the win. They're not going to lose it. They won't go out and win the game because they're not an overly talented team that's just going to beat you down, but they will do their best to hold on to it. The Buccaneers are kind of the opposite. They're not as fundamentally sound. They're more ebbs and flows, kind of like a roller coaster. They're going to take the game at times, and they're also then going to give the game away at times. So the Buccaneers have to be at their kind of be on their P's and Q's because the Falcons are steady Eddie. You kind of know what they're going to give you. It's not going to be too flashy. It's not going to be too pretty, but it's also not going to be treacherously bad either. They're going to hang around. It's going to be most likely an ugly game. Neither team is likely to get blown out. So the Buccaneers are going to have to play 60 full minutes of football, which has not been the strong suit of the team this year. A lot of flash in the pan moments and then moments. They get to play 60 full minutes against a team that's pretty hard-nosed and pretty physical and wants to run the football and play some defense. And if the Buccaneers can do that, then they're the more talented team. They should be able to win, and they deserve to win. I just think the Falcons, they're not going to give it to you. They're not the kind of team. They're not going to choke it away and hand you a victory.
No, I agree. And I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is what you just said, like narrative game, right? You had games earlier this year that not just fans look at, but but that Jason Light probably looks at, that the Glaziers probably look at. That first game against the Falcons, that Houston Texans game where you lose those winnable games. This is the time to flip the Indianapolis Colts game. This is the time to flip that around. Right now is the time.
The only good narrative game the Bucs have had, because those are all bad narrative games, right? They did not win. The narrative was anti-Buck. The good narrative game was against the Saints. When the Bucs beat the Saints in the Dome, that flipped the narrative, throttled it up, because you're like, wow, the Buccaneers are 3-1 and just beat our arch nemesis in their building. Baker played well. The offense looked crisp. The defense shut down Derek Carr. We're like, man, Jameis came in and threw a pick. You were like, man, like, that was a really positive narrative altering game. Haven't had one since. They've been negative. All the narrative opportunities have been missed for the Buccaneers, and they've just missed their opportunities, really. This is, like you said, it's an opportunity to get back to that positive, good vibes feeling.
Yeah, get one of those wins back, right? And really just, again, kind of take more control of your destiny here, right? Again, like you said, if they lose, that's not good. I mean, that's when, like, you genuinely might be saying, like, okay, like, it's probably gonna be the Falcons winning the division here, and the Bucs are fighting for second place.
Because then you have to, if the Bucs go 0-2 versus the Falcons, then you really need to have a better record than them. Then tiebreakers aren't necessarily, doesn't help you. You need to actually be a full game better. If you split with them, all of a sudden you can kind of cheese it with tiebreakers. The fact that you beat the Saints twice or beat the Panthers twice and split with them, then there are other, you can finagle it. If you just lose 0-2 to them, you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, I agree. So that is what makes this game so important, Billy. There's a lot of narratives with this. There's going to be a lot of things coming after this game, be it good or bad, and we'll see if the Bucs, are going to answer that call here and what is, in both of our opinions, the most important game of the year. But
are you feeling good about it, champs?
Yeah, sure, why not?
How good you feeling? 1 to 10.
Ooh, I'm probably at like a solid 6.5.
6.5. All right, I was thinking. Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. I was thinking you would say 7, so I'm with you.
I'm at like a 6.5. But Billy, with that being said, we've covered a lot today. We've been going for about 45 minutes, and I think it was a good podcast episode today. Think it was a good one today. Thank you for everybody being in the chat, Billy. Before we go ahead and head off, do you have any final words for anybody watching?
I feel like every time you ask me that, you put me on the spot.
I do put you on the spot.
You hate Thanksgiving food.
I do. How do you feel about eggnog?
I like eggnog.
Oh, we finally agree.
Oh, all right.
I'm a big eggnog guy.
Eggnog for the win.
I just bought eggnog and strawberry milk recently. It was fantastic.
You know what? I have not had any eggnog yet this year, and you just made me realize how much I'm missing out.
Gotta have some eggnog, man. It's good stuff. People want to mix. People want to mix whatever they want. Because it's a PG show. People want it family friendly. People can mix whatever they want into their eggnog. Me, I'm just a straight eggnog guy. Like it, tastes good, a little cinnamon.
All about the nog.
I'm all about the nog, man. I'm all about the nog. Maybe next week we can do a Christmas movie. Something about Christmas movies. We talk about Christmas movies. Not for the whole podcast. I mean at the end.
A top 5 list of Christmas.
Yeah,
Christmas
we can do it. Well, yeah, I'll give everybody in the chat time to think of their top 5 favorite Christmas movies, and then we'll reconvene next week. How does that sound?
Christmas songs too.
Christmas songs too. We could do that. Can't play them on here, otherwise I'll get a copyright claim in 5 seconds.
Let me ask you something. Can we hum them? Can we do?
Probably,
what?
We'll get found in our houses, Billy. They'll get us.
We can't do a little acapella?
I wish. I think it's off limits. But guys, listen, thank you so much for watching this podcast episode. Go subscribe to Billy. He is William_Walsh_NFL here on YouTube. He's uploading. You're uploading every day.
Wow. That don't lie to the people. Then they're gonna subscribe and they're gonna be disappointed.
We,
But I
you,
appreciate the shout out. Yeah, it'd be cool if you guys
yeah,
come hang out.
look,
We
we're also trying to get Billy to 1,000 subscribers. So let's do that. He's almost there. He's about halfway there. So we need my man to get to 1,000.
big stretch of the word almost. He's almost there, about 50%.
Yeah, he's almost there. Look, we'll get you there, Billy. But guys, hey, thank you so much for watching this live stream episode, or this podcast episode, I guess I should say, and this live stream. It's greatly appreciated. Again, go subscribe to Billy. And as always, guys, we will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now. See you soon, and go Bucs. Okay, we're done.